In Egypt, Abram thought he had to take his fate into his own hands. He had to look out for himself. Now, he was wiser and he was more willing to let God look out for his interests. Right or left, it didn't matter to Abram because God would be there, because he trusted in God. Abram did not have to be obsessed with his own rights, and neither do we. Everything we received is a free gift of God and has nothing to do with our concept of rights. There's a bigger topic there. We'll do that another time. Lot chooses his portion. Let's look at verse 10 to 13. Lot lifted his eyes and saw all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere before the Lord had destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. It was like a garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt as you go toward Zoar. Then Lot chose for himself the plain of the Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated from each other. Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain and pitched his tent even as far as Sodom. But the men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked and sinful against the Lord. Now it says here, it's like a garden of the Lord. Lot made his choice purely based on what he could see with his eyes. He cared for only the material abundance that could be provided. He cared for nothing of how it would impact him and his family spiritually. As much as anything, faith means we do not walk by what we see, but by what we know to be true in God. What's the song say? We walk by faith, not by sight. Abram walked by faith. Lot walked by sight, and only sight. Notice he says he pitched his tent even as far as Sodom. It was only this far now, but now later on, Lot became a leader in that sinful city, valuing only the things that can be seen, increased his concept of wealth, but it also lost a lot as well, didn't it? Of course, Lot thought, I can serve God as well there as here, and they probably need a witness, but he deceived himself, as many have done since. Jeremiah 17:9 states, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? You see, in the end, he who sought this world was lost. He who was willing to give up everything in honour of God, he was blessed long term. That was Abram. It wasn't Lot's choice that led his heart astray, but his heart was already astray, and it was demonstrated by his choice. God confirms his promise to Abram. This goes on in verse 14 and 15, and I love this. This choice has been made, and God says to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, lift your eyes now and look from the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, and westward. For all the land which you see I will give to you and your descendants forever. Do we get that? After Lot had separated from him, God wanted to talk to Abram alone after Lot was out of the picture. This was a promise made to Abram, not his nephew. The promise of the land had been made to Abram when he lived in Ur. That's chapter 12 and verses 1 to 3. God now repeated the promise, but he repeated it in such a way that he could actually see it. All the land which you see I give to you. God also wanted to remind Abram that even though Abram had been generous enough to grant some of the land to his nephew Lot, God still said the land belonged to him. Wow. God reminds Abram of his promise is not only for him, but for those who come after him, his kids, his grandkids. It says in verse 16, and I will make your descendants as the dust of the earth, so that if a man could number the dust of the earth, then your descendants also could be numbered. That's big. I will make your descendants as the dust of the earth. This was quite a promise to make to a childless man in his 70s or 80s. Let's be realistic, that's a big one. Abraham knew to walk by faith, not by sight. Your descendants. Again, the promise is made to those generations, even through to now. To assure Abram, God repeated his promise. And he does so right throughout the Bible to his people. Abram walks through the land God gave him. Listen to this. He's instructed to do exactly that. Verse 17. Arise and walk in the land through its length and its width, for I give it to you. Then Abraham moved his tent and went and dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and built an altar there to the Lord. I just love this concept. Okay, go out and find what I've given you. Arise, walk in the land through its length, its width, for I give it to you. So now he's getting a concept of what the gift that he's given. That's awesome. God wants Abram to explore his promise, to walk through it as if it was his, and it is, though he did not have a record of ownership to the land or anything like that. In the same way, God wants us to explore our land of promise for us. His word, yes, but where does God want to take us? Because he promises us that he's going to bless us. We need to walk through that land and find some of that stuff out. He wants us to walk through our lives, through our land, possessing it by faith. Think about that. Notice it says there, dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre, which are in Hebron. The name Mamre means vision. Hebron means communion. Abraham once again walked in the Lord's vision and the communion with the Lord. Some of the words and names of things are fabulous in the Old Testament. And built an altar there to the Lord. He built another altar. He lived a life in constant awareness that there needs to be a sacrificial atonement and covering. Question: should we walk the land that we are responsible for? Should we go for a walk around our neighbourhood to see what we are responsible for in a spiritual administration? It's an interesting thought, isn't it? I mean, it's a really interesting thought. Is your ministry those people who are around you? Maybe you need to walk and see what's happening. Bless you.